So here I just want to make a quick video to give you guys some tips and ideas for sketching your thumbnails for the next project. So here we go. So here all the thumbnails will be in your sketchbook. So here's my digital version of a sketchbook. So I think you need 15 for the project. Double check that on Canvas. So start by just drawing some frames in your sketchbook. Okay. So each one should be about 3 inches on the longest side. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. You can draw these with a ruler or just freehand, whatever kind of makes more sense for you. So you could probably fit, 4 or 5 on a page. So I would say experiment with ones that are different shapes and sizes. So some that are tall, skinny rectangles, some that are squares, some that are horizontal rectangles. So remember I said you can try some abstract and some representational. So the main thing with these ones is you want to have that clear focal point. So I'm just going to draw some shape possibilities of what I could use as a focal point. Any of these shapes we could use as a focal point, okay? So let's just start here with this one. So again, remember that rule of thirds are symmetrical, so you can go ahead and sketch this in very lightly, maybe even lighter than that. That rule of thirds to help you place the focal point. So remember that means you'll place the focal point here, 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 or there. So let's just choose one of these shapes. Kind of looks like a person, but we're still going to do abstract for this one. So place that in there first. You can color it in to make it dark and stand out. Then I would usually just build a few other shapes in there. Okay, so this is a kind of organic roundish shape. So maybe I'll just put in some rectangles here, a few different spots. Okay, and we wanted to deal with leading lines then. So maybe we come in and put some leading lines in here. Lead us maybe all the way from this corner right down to that focal point. Where else could we have? Maybe we have some shapes back here that act as leading lines as well. That might be enough for this one. Then I would just want to add a little bit of value in here. So maybe darken up some of these shapes, but we don't want them quite as dark as the focal point. So I think your final pieces I have on Canvas, they have to have at least 15 shapes, so you can just come and start repeating different shapes as well in here. But we would be getting close to 15 now if we did this in Illustrator because of all those little circles. Okay, and this is about good for a thumbnail. Okay, we got clear focal point, we got some leading lines here, some leading lines here, and some other simple shapes in there. Alright, let's choose another shape for our next one. So again, I like to kind of sketch these rule of thirds in there just to be a good place to start. Let's just start with kind of a triangular shape of some sort. Go for a really tall, like skinny triangle. Alright, so now I'll start with some leading lines. So maybe we have some lines coming in from over here. Maybe we have some come from up here as well. Remember, especially when you're doing abstract, you can just focus on getting lots of different types of lines. So now I have a really thick line here on the bottom. These are thinner lines. Now we have kind of a dash line come in here too. Alright, and then usually once you get some shapes in there, again, I kind of did it first here. But you want to get some value in there. So usually that focal point should be the darkest shape. And you just want to fill up some of these other shapes with other values. So not quite as dark as that as your focal point. And I'm just going to repeat some of these rectangle shapes here. I think it's kind of nice to just repeat shapes once you get some that you like. Add in a few more leading lines here, kind of in the corners. There we go. All right. So both of these, the focal point is kind of small-ish. So maybe you want a larger focal point, and maybe you want to try a symmetrical composition as well. So let's try a symmetrical composition here. And let's just do a big round shape, I guess, for the, or no, let's do a rectangular shape for the focal point. So maybe we want there's a big rectangle shape there, and that can be our focal point. Just totally fine. I want it even a little bigger. So we'll get some leading lines coming in here, leading us all the way across the composition. Maybe we put some triangle shapes down here to also point at it. And then get some values. So get some nice dark values here on the focal point. Some lighter values here on the ground or the bottom of the composition. Okay, so you should decide if you want to do representational for abstract. But the biggest tip I have for these abstract ones is move the focal point around to a different third. So I could use the same focal point here, but maybe I put it on a third up here. So each one of these does not need to be dramatically different. So here's the same focal point shape, it's just on a different third. Then as I do that, I can even use these same rectangular shapes down here. And I can use those same leading lines. Maybe I have the leading lines coming up from the bottom this time. Then we use the circle. So you can have some that use all the same elements and shapes. So even if you're having trouble coming up with ideas, you can still use the same stuff, but just kind of arrange them differently, use a different third, make the focal point bigger, make the focal point smaller, use rule of thirds, use symmetrical, and hopefully that should allow you to get enough different options. Okay. So I'll just do one or two representational ones as well. And just delete these. So if you want to do some representational too, that is perfectly fine. So again, I suggest doing a little bit of both. So again, you'll start with your focal point here. Throw this rule of thirds on here. So maybe we want to do like a very simple car shape for representational. Okay, so let's put that car shape right here. Get that drawn in there first, and that's going to be our focal point. Then we just build the rest of the composition around it the same way we did with the abstract ones, but we have to think about actual things for our shapes to be. So on the bottom we'll put a nice curve, but that will end up being our road. So then we can throw a dotted line on there. So that acts as a leading line. The edge of this road acts as a leading line. We can have some exhaust coming from the back of the car. That'll act as a leading line. And then we just build some other shapes in here. So we pretend we're in a city. So I'm just going to build some simple rectangular shapes. Repeat those a few times. And then maybe we got, a guy over here and he's pointing at the car as another leading line. But yeah, so we got leading lines here on the ground, the dotted line, the exhaust, and then a bunch of simple shapes as well. Oh, we could even put some smoke coming down from a chimney, which will act as a leading line. I could put some like cracks in the ground that lead up there as well. And then you'll need some values, so I want to get this car nice and dark. And then think of some lighter values to put in other spots. So maybe we color this section in a little bit darker. Okay, but it's pretty much that same process whether you're doing representational or whether you're doing abstract. Okay. Let's do one more. Maybe you want to do, so you could do different versions with this car. You move the car to this third, this third, this third, this third. And just do a slightly different version. You can make the car bigger, car smaller. Maybe we do a tree. Let's do a tree for our focal point in this one. So remember, eventually we will be taking these into Illustrator and making digital versions of them, but this is how every project's going to start. So let's put it up here on this third. Let's do a pretty small little tree. With smaller focal points, it gives you a little bit more space of finding ways to get leading lines in there. So there's our focal point. Let's put it on top of this big hill. Let's put some other smaller tree shape or other tree shapes down here that are pointing up at it. Clouds, we said, are really easy ways to get leading lines in there. Some other hills in the background. Throw in some other shapes. Okay, and then we need some value, so let's put some darker values over this whole section. I want to leave the sky here light because the tree is dark, so I don't want it to overlap too much there. Make these shapes darker. Making all these these tree shapes down here a little bit darker, and then I can make this. So there we go. So it's representational here, but really the process for these are the same whether it's abstract or representational. When drawing representationally, I don't need to worry about it being realistic. Just really thinking about simple silhouette shapes, leading lines, and a clear focal point for these thumbnails and this project.